Okay, chapter 4, drawing tools. So I've got a blank drawing here, and I just want to give a little overview of these tools before we get stuck into them. And there's a few things to mention here. One of them is just accessibility, and the other thing is commands. If you go through the beginning of your notes here, page 10, so there's a few ways in which to access these tools, okay? For the sake of the course, most of the time we're just going to access them by clicking on the icon up here in the ribbon. But you can also access it by typing a shortcut command into the command line over here, or just in space actually. And that's one way that you should really get your head around and get familiar with, because commands are such an integral part of AutoCAD that learning to type them in is going to save you a lot of time at the end of the day. It's going to help you from making mistakes, and it's just another way of accomplishing something in a bit more of an efficient way. And then the third way of accessing something, so the first way would be clicking on its icon, the second way would be entering its command, which is sometimes abbreviated, but we'll get into that. The third way would be to find the command up here in the menu, okay? My menu is shown at the moment, but you might have an interface that looks something like this, okay? That menu bar is not visible, and that's fine. It's because there's more than one way to get to that tool, and so by default when AutoCAD opens up, the menu bar is not there. So just be aware that it is there. If you ever go away to another business, or they have a slightly different version of AutoCAD, you might see that menu bar is there, or somebody asks you to do something in the menu bar and you think, hey, I can't see it, mine doesn't have that. Well, you can always bring it back by just typing menu bar, okay? Make sure now the tool is selected, just type menu bar, hit enter, and you'll see right now it says new value for menu bar. Here at the bottom it says right now it's in 0, that's its current value, it's in these little pointy brackets. I'm going to change that 0 to 1, right? 0 means it's off right now, but if I type 1 and hit enter, it's going to give me that menu bar back. There it is up there, okay? I can go to view, insert, format, tools. So this is just the third way of getting to all these things that are hidden up here on the ribbon, or through command, okay? But for now, let's make my one look like yours. I'm going to turn it off again. There we go. Okay, so how to use commands. Well, they're a really core part of AutoCAD, so you need to know how to use them and get familiar with the various commands and their features. And the easiest way to start typing a command is, first of all, make sure you're not currently busy with another tool. You can check this by just hitting escape a few times. That makes sure that any process you may currently be doing is cancelled. And then when you want to enter a command, you can just start typing, okay? So I'm just going to type line. That will give me the line tool. You'll see as I type, it comes out next to the cursor here. And it's got autocomplete function. That's a bit like your phone as well. It kind of figures out what you're trying to type. So I'm done typing line. Now I'm just going to hit enter to submit that command. And now it's saying specify first point. And at the bottom here, my command line is saying line, specify first point. That means that I've now successfully entered the command line, and it's given me the line tool. Okay, I do the first point, and we can actually draw this line. We'll get to that just now. So that was one way of just entering a command. Another way is, instead of typing in free space, okay, line like that, I can go down, click over here where it says type a command, and I can type it directly into the command window, line. Okay, hit enter, there, specify first point, it's giving me the line tool again. So I can either type it into free space here, let's try something else like rectangle. Or I can click it down here and type the same thing in there, rectangle. In fact, I'm just going to choose this autocomplete option here, makes life a bit simpler. There you go. So there's two simple ways to draw a command, okay? To enter a command. I'm going to delete those. So just refer to the notes, there's a little yellow block there, that's quite important. To enter a command, simply start typing, right? Submit it, press the enter key, no problem, we know that. If you want to cancel or exit the tool or anything that you're busy with, hit escape a few times. So let's say I want to draw a circle, and then type in circle to give me the circle tool. My center point. Oh, wait a minute, I've decided I don't want to draw a circle anymore. I just press escape, okay? Command cancel, just like that. The next thing you need to know is that spacebar functions the same as enter. So if I want to, let's say, type circle again, instead of hitting enter, I can just hit spacebar. Okay, and it's pretty much the same thing. But for now, maybe forget about spacebar. Just use enter. Let's not confuse you too much. Also, if I have no command, I've got nothing entered right now. AutoCAD is just idle, sitting, waiting for me to do something. If I hit enter without typing in any command at all, it's going to give me the previously used command. So what was the last thing I did? I think it was circle. Let's find out. If I hit enter, there, it's given me circle, okay? So if I draw a line, let's draw a line over here, okay? I'm all happy with that. Let's say I want to draw a line again. I don't have to go and type line all over again or go and select the line tool. I can just hit enter and it's going to repeat the last command, okay? And it's giving me the line tool again. So there's a quick little crash course on how to use commands, but as we go through the drawing tools and they're explained and you can actually see what their commands are written down, you'll get more familiar with working with them, and it'll make your life easier. I should also add that at the bottom of your notes here is a little link to a list of common tool keyboard shortcuts. Single keys that you can press on your keyboard to get a particular tool, or what their actual command keyword is, which is the thing that you would type in. So there's a list that you can download from the Autodesk website, so that might help you out a little bit as well. So if we turn the page to page 11 now on the notes, there's a little key at the top, and that explains the format of how the tools are laid out in the notes. You can see that on the left-hand side there, we've got an icon of a tool, and that'll show you where to find it on the ribbon. Okay, it's the most straightforward way to get to it. What is the tool name? Okay, it's written there at the top, tool example. The command is written underneath that, and it's in a grey text, and there's got a /, and that separates the big word for the tool, like rectangle, circle, or something like that, versus its abbreviated form, okay, which is just T. So if I want a line is a good example, I can type in line, and it gives me the line tool, but I can also just type in L, and it also gives me line, okay? Not every tool is like this. Sometimes you have to type the whole word out, Sometimes you can just press 1 or 2 letters. It's just a quicker way, you know, when you're doing a lot of drawing, all these seconds add up, and they can really make a difference to how quickly you can get something done. So that's the way tools are laid out. So just have a look as you go through the notes, familiarize yourself with its various icons and shortcuts, so you always know how to find them and how to get to them. Even if you lose them on the ribbon somewhere, you still know how to type them in directly. Okay, so we're going to start with the most basic tool, and that is the line. So let's get to it in 3 ways. Let's type line, and now the tool is active, okay? I know it's active because it's asking me to specify the first point, and that's a pretty good definition for a line, okay? It's a line between 2 points, point A and point B. So I'm going to specify the first point. I'm going to move my mouse somewhere random. That's point 1, so I just left clicked and then I released. And now if I move my mouse around, you can see I can position this line in space, and then I can if I read the command line, or if I read this little grey bar next to my cursor here, it's saying specify next point, okay? This is the end of your line basically. So if I click here, it's going to draw a line between those 2 points. Now you'll see that as I move my mouse, it's already started the first point of another line for me. This is a useful little function because AutoCAD knows that very often you don't just want to draw one line, you want to draw a bunch of them. So when I specify the second point of my line, it automatically starts the first point of a new line for you. If you do only want to draw one line, that's fine. You can just press escape, and the one line that you drew will stay there. Okay. I'm going to delete this, and remember I did a quick little selection there by drawing that little selection window, but I could have just also just highlighted and clicked on it as well. So you'll get more familiar with selecting objects as we go through. So that was one example of just typing in the command line and getting to the line tool. I can also choose it from up here in the ribbon, line. Okay, we're familiar with how it works now. I can just carry on drawing lines indefinitely like this until the cows come home, okay? I'm going to delete all of those. Another thing I want you to notice here, I'm going to select the line tool again. I'm going to put down the first point. Now you'll see here that AutoCAD gives me these useful measurements. You'll see it's given me a length measurement here, which is in this white box, 950.77. Okay, remember we're using a metric template, so that is millimeters. So all the coordinates, or at least all the measurements I'm seeing in the drawing space here, are always given in millimeters. So this is a 950 millimeter 0.77 line. Okay, and it's at an angle of 50 degrees right now. As I move my mouse, you'll see this changes all the time. So that AutoCAD is always letting you know how long the line is that you're going to draw and what angle it's at. Okay, and this is just useful. Another thing you'll notice is that it tends to snap. Okay, there's a green line. It's snapping straight up now. I want to snap it horizontally. I'll move it over there. We'll go into that in more detail towards the end of this tool. But just a couple of things to take notice of there. Okay, so I'm going to select the tool here. You see here 1419. These are very not nice round numbers. Okay, it's very unlikely that you're going to be drawing a line that is exactly 1235.1706 millimeters. Okay, you probably have a measurement in your head or something that's more of a round number that you want to draw. So you already know the length of the line. So you can just press L, give me the line tool again. Okay, I'm going to put my first point down here, and now, because I'm going to draw a horizontal line for the sake of this demonstration, you see it's giving me a point now, a length now that's saying it's 1276 point something, okay? Let's say I already know ahead of time what I want to make that. I want to make that 1,000 millimeters, okay? 1 meter. I'm just going to start typing. I haven't clicked yet to place my second point. I've only placed the first point of the line. I've moved my mouse over to the left here because I want my line to be horizontal and I want it to go from left to right. So I'm going to type in the length that I want now before clicking the second time. I'm just going to type in 1000 on my keyboard. I'm going to hit enter, and there. It's given me a line that's 1000. It's already started the next line, but I'm going to cancel that. Okay. There it is there. That line now is now exactly 1000 millimeters. If I want to draw another one that's 500 mils, let's say I want to draw it at the end of this line, and I want to make it go upwards. This is where snapping comes in useful. As I move my cursor to the corner of that line, you'll see a little green box appears around it. Okay, and if I hover my mouse there for a second, it says endpoint. As long as that green box is selected, it means that when I start the next point of this line, or another tool for that matter, it's going to snap to that endpoint, okay, that little green box there. And this is a very important way to keep all your drawings connected when it comes to things like hatching and boundaries and so on and so forth later on, and also dimensioning. But you never want to draw lines so that they just appear to connect. They must actually connect, okay? And that's why snapping is so important. It means that whenever you're drawing geometry and you want them to all touch or intersect in a neat, accurate way, you need to make sure that before you start drawing, you always see that little green box. And we'll go into this in more detail soon. But for now, I'm just going to make sure that that endpoint is selected just by hovering close to it, okay, snapping to it. And I'm going to start a new line now. I'm going to move upwards in this direction. And the last one we drew was 500 mils. This one, sorry, it was 1,000 mils. Millimeters, and now this one, let's make it 650. So I'm just going to type 650. Remember, I haven't clicked a second time yet. I just moved my mouse in the direction I want the line to go, and now I'm going to type 650, enter, and now it's giving me a line that's exactly 650 millimeters high. Okay, and so this is a good way to just draw lines of specific length and be very accurate with the way that you draw. Okay, and then there's an even more specific way to draw a line, and this will come in useful sometimes also, is that it's to specify the angle and the distance, or think of the distance as length in this case. Okay, there's a specific format which you need to type this into the command line. You use the @ symbol, like an email address, like jim@gmail.com. It's that same @ symbol. So I'm going to start off by, and I'm just going to delete these lines. So I've got a blank drawing space here. I've got no tool selected at this point. I'm going to select the line tool first, specifying my first point. Okay. Now I'm going to type the @ symbol. Okay, and then I'm going to type in the distance that I want. So let's make this one 2,000 millimeters or 2 meters. And the next thing I'm going to draw is a little, it looks like a little V on its side, okay? It's a little pointy bracket tool. And if you look on your keyboard, it's right next to the M key. It's the symbol that is on top of the comma key. So you have to hit Shift to get it, okay? So Shift, and there I've typed that little symbol, and you can see a little lock icon has appeared next to that 2000 now, because it's now locked in that dimension. And now it's just waiting for me to put in the angle that I want to draw it at. So let's make this 45 degrees, okay? 45, I'm going to hit Enter. Ah, there we go. I have to zoom out a little bit to see it. But there, it started the next line for me. I don't want that, so I'm just going to hit Escape. But there is a line that's now 2000 millimeters long at exactly 45 degrees, okay? Let's try that again. I'm going to type line to give me the line tool. Enter. I'm going to specify my first point, okay? Let's start the line over here. I'm going to type the @ sign. I'm going to type a new length. That one was 2000. Let's make this one 1500, okay? And then I'm going to, I don't need to type enter, I'm just going to go straight in with that symbol, that little V that looks like it's pointing to the left, okay, next to the M key above the comma. There we go, and let's make this one 60 degrees. Enter. Okay, there we go. I'm going to cancel the second line. Now I've drawn one that's 1.5 meters long, or 1,500 mils, and it's at 60 degrees, okay? And the way that AutoCAD understands degrees, if you look in your notes here, there's a little diagram. 90 degrees is north, okay? It's always pointing straight up. So if I want to draw a line that goes straight up, AutoCAD would understand that as being 90 degrees. If I want to draw one that is going straight horizontal, that is basically 0 degrees, or 180, okay? Because they lie on the same plane. If I were to type, let's start a new line here. Let's say I want it to be 500, and I want it to be at 0 degrees. It's going to give me a horizontal line. There we go. Okay, and that was the point that I started, and it gave me a horizontal line going this way. Now if I do the same line, I'm going to start it over here, and I type 180 degrees, it's still going to give me a horizontal line, but it'll go in the other direction, okay? Just look at this diagram. So I'm going to type at 500, my angle symbol, and I'm going to say 180. There we go. There. So you see, the starting point was in the same position, okay? But instead of giving me a line from left to right, it gave me a line from right to left. So that is a way to draw really specific lines of specific length at specific angles. And you can just use this diagram to figure out what angle your line wants to be at. So if you want to draw one that's going down at that angle, then you would use probably 315. Okay, that would be your angle, or thereabouts, depending on what it is you're drawing. So that's a really specific way to draw lines. And you'll notice towards the end of the note there it says, now that you've been working with the line tool a little bit, you've probably noticed the effects of snapping and polar tracking. Okay, that was what I spoke about with endpoints, but we will go into that in a little more detail also. But that is the line tool. Okay. Before we move on to the next tool, which is Polyline, we're just going to look at polar tracking, object snap, and object snap tracking. So we went over these things a little bit when we set up the user interface, and we're going to go over them a little bit again now in some more detail, because it's really just going to set you up for drawing really efficiently later on. So just to start, polar tracking, you probably noticed it already when I was using the line tool. I'm going to start a line tool here. So this is very simply, it's this green dotted line that starts to shoot out as I'm drawing my line. So you can see right now it's perfectly horizontal, okay? Remember, I'm using the x-axis, I'm moving side to side. And you'll see that as I draw the line, that little green dotted line shoots out there, and you'll see underneath the word polar is written. That means right now it's giving me coordinates, and then after that is 0 degrees. That means I'm drawing right now at perfectly 0 degrees, which is horizontal, okay? If I move my mouse up here, I can also snap it. Now you see it says polar, it gives me a coordinates, and then it's it says 90 degrees, okay? And I can do the same thing going the other way, and it's going to snap into that direction, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, etc. So right now you can see that it's snapping to those particular points, and this just references that diagram that you have in your notes, this one over there, okay? And you can change those snapping increments, okay? So those are the amount of angles that you want to snap to. So right now, I'm going to just hit escape to cancel that. Right now, if I go down to my polar tracking tool over here and I click the little drop down arrow next to it, you can see there at the top I've got selected 90, 180, 270, 360. So those are the 4 degrees of snapping I have. If I want to add an extra one between all those angles, let's say 45 degrees also, I'm going to select this option, okay? Now when I draw the line, you'll see it's snapping there at 0. Now if I get close to 45, there, it's going to snap at 45, 90, 135, and so on, okay? And I can just change those into finer and finer increments by selecting them from the list over here. So that, in a nutshell, is polar tracking, okay? And the next thing we're going to look at is object snap. Okay, so you would have seen this happening already. It's that little green square that keeps popping up. So I'm just going to draw a line over here. I'm going to draw a few. Okay, there's some lines. Now you'll see as I get close here with another tool, line, there I'm getting the little green square again. Okay, that means that if I start to click now, that is going to snap to that point over there. And I'm going to draw a rectangle over here. Okay, now I can choose to snap just to the end points of certain geometry, and I can choose to snap to other points as well. For instance, if I have an arc, okay, a curved line, I can snap to the end points of that, but I can also snap to the midpoint, and I can snap to the midpoint of a straight line as well, and I can select all of these points that I want to snap to, if you remember from the user interface chapter, by going here to this little drop down arrow next to object snap, and you'll see those are the ones that we had checked from earlier. I've restarted the program, and so it seems to have forgotten some of the settings, but you probably want to go back and just make sure that a couple of these extra ones are ticked. I know midpoint is a really common one. Perpendicular helps sometimes. You know, you can turn these things on and off. Settings are like that. You can't really break it necessarily. As long as you know where to find the setting, you can always go back and change it. Node, no, I'm going to leave that off maybe. These are the main ones to start with for now. So you'll see I've got midpoint, endpoint, and center on at the moment. So if I were to select this line, for instance, in fact, let me make it a bit simpler here. I'm going to draw just one straight line. Okay, right now, if I want to take another tool and connect to that, I've got endpoint snapping on. Okay, there, if I hover my mouse, it tells me endpoint. I've got endpoint over there, and I can also go to the midpoint here. There we go. It gives me a little triangle symbol. That means it's a midpoint snap. And then if I hover my mouse there, it says midpoint also. Okay, so if I were to turn this off, let's say I don't want midpoint anymore. Okay, I'm going to hit escape. Now if I come back to my line tool, I can snap to endpoints, both endpoints, right? But if I get close here, it's not going to give me that midpoint anymore. It's because I've chosen not to be able to snap there. Okay, I've turned that setting off. If I put it back on, you'll see it's giving me midpoint snapping again. Okay, so just get a little bit familiar with that stuff. It's going to help you loads. And then the next thing we're going to chat about is object snap tracking. Okay, and this is kind of building on object snapping. I'm going to draw, quickly replicate what's here in the notes. Okay, so let's say, for instance, that you want to use you want to draw a point out here in space, okay? And it needs to, if you were to draw an imaginary line from this point coming down here, and an imaginary line from this point, or this one over here, coming across here, where they intersect, that's where I want to start some new geometry. So I could go through the process of drawing a line like this, and then drawing another line. That's my intersection point there. And then I'm going to start a new line from there, and I want the line to join. I'm going to draw it right out there, okay? And then I can go and delete these lines that I don't want that's very tedious, okay? It's much easier to just use snap tracking, and it works like this, okay? As long as you have it turned on, which is this little button over here, show snapping reference lines, I can, and I've just selected my align tool here, I can hover over the endpoint snap of this particular line here. And then if I just remain there for just a second and I start moving my mouse down, you'll see that it's leaving a little green line behind, almost like polar tracking, okay? That is because AutoCAD has remembered that little snapping point. And now if I move, and you'll see it's remembered it because it leaves a little green plus on it, okay? And every time I get close to it, it's going to give me one of those little reference lines, all right? That's the line that we're talking about. So if I move over to this one here, it's going to give me the endpoint. I'll hover there for a second. Now as I start moving, it's giving me another green plus there, meaning that AutoCAD has now remembered that snap point, okay? So now I've got a green plus over here in that corner. I got one up there as well. Now if I draw a line that's kind of going across here, as I get to that line there, you see, they start to intersect. And so it's given me that reference in space without me having to draw actual lines, okay? I've just done it by moving the mouse around. And I haven't even clicked once, okay? I've just left it in place over the snapping point for the right amount of time to get these lines to work. So now if I start drawing a line, there we go. It's going to start perfectly from that point in space. And so that was just a basic example of how to get reference lines off, you know, two objects like that that are perpendicular to one another. But you'll find that as you start drawing more and more complicated things, you're going to use this all the time. And so that's why it's got a whole page devoted to it in the notes, because it's really important that you understand those basics now. Make your life much easier. Okay, and now we can move on to the next tool, which is the polyline. Cool. And this is basically a line. It functions like the line tool, but think of it as a group of lines, okay? And instead of just straight ones, you can add in arcs as well, which are kind of segments of a circle, so curved lines. So I'm going to select the polyline tool, and I can do that from the panel here in the home ribbon, the home tab of the ribbon, or I can type in, and you can see under the notes there, okay, I can type in P line or just PL. PL, enter, there we go. I've got a polyline, okay? Oops. And if I just start drawing now, there we go. I'm going to draw a couple of lines over here. And I'm going to use some of that snap tracking like I showed you before. There we go. Okay, I'm going to hit enter when I'm done, and you can see that I manually closed this polyline myself, okay? I made it a closed shape by joining those two segments together. So there, I've selected it, and you can see that the whole thing shows up as one line. If I drew the same shape out of using regular lines, okay, like this. Now if I select it, you'll see it gives me the individual lines, okay? It hasn't grouped them together as one single shape or one single line. And that's kind of what a polyline is. So you'll see when I select this, it's giving me the whole thing all together, okay? But I can still break it apart into individual line segments, and I can do this by just typing explode. So I can type explode, and it'll ask me to select objects, and then I click on this one, and I can hit enter now that I'm done. And there, you'll see it exploded it, and now if I go to it, you'll see that it's giving me individual line segments, okay? Kind of like I drew it out of smaller lines. So that is a one demonstration of a polyline. I'm going to now draw it again, but I'm going to use an arc as well. So I'm going to draw a straight line here, and let's say I want a round tip, okay? to join the next few lines. So you'll see at the bottom, just read the command line there. It says specify next point, arc, close, half, width, length, undo, width. Okay? And you'll notice that the first letter of each of those is a blue colored letter, okay? And so if I type that blue colored letter, so A for arc, C for close, H for half width, etc., okay, I can now change the property of the tool or the option of the tool to give me an arc instead of a straight line, which is what I want. So it's saying specify next point or arc, close, etc. I'm going to hit A for arc, okay, and don't worry about typing it as a capital, you can just type a lowercase a. Hit enter. Now it's going to give me an arc. You see, as I'm drawing, it's giving me that instead of a straight line. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to click yes. It's giving me an arc again. I want to switch back to a line, okay? So I read the command line again. P line, angle, center, close, direction, line, radius, second. So there's a few options here, but L is the one I want, L for line. I'm going to type L, enter, there we go. It's giving me a straight line again. I'm going to link it up with this one. There we go. In fact, I'm not going to link it up. I'm going to use the close option instead, okay, which does the same thing for me. So let's read the command line, arc, close, set, C for close, right? Type C, enter, there we go. It closed the shape for me, okay? And now if I select it, you can see it's all one grouped shape. So that's polylines, okay? And the last thing that I want to tell you just about that is you can use the pedit command, or pedit, to select multiple lines, okay? And then we can join them together into polylines. So just like you could take a polyline and explode it into its separate little lines, you can also take separate lines and combine them into a polyline. And it just makes working a little bit easier, because instead of selecting parts of a shape, let's say you have a plan view of a pillar or some sort of garden feature, instead of selecting every edge and corner of that garden feature, if you drew the thing as a polyline, or combine some lines together into a polyline afterwards, you just need to select one part of it and the whole thing will select, okay? So it's a lot more neater and organized way to draw. So I'm going to just draw some regular lines here. There we go. Okay. Now you'll see that as I move my mouse over, they're all highlighting individually because they're not joined yet. Now I'm going to use that pedit command, so P-E-D-I-T, okay, enter, select polyline, okay. So let's read the command line here. It's asking me if I want to select one polyline right now. It's not saying polylines. So I want to choose the multiple option. I don't want to just make one polyline into, or one line into a polyline. I want to make a few, okay, and join them all together. So I'm going to hit M for multiple there in the command line. I want to select multiple lines. So it's now saying select objects. Okay, so I can do this one by one, or remember I can use the selection box, okay? There we go, or selection window. So now I've selected everything. I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit enter now to proceed to the next step of this tool. Convert arcs, lines, arcs, and splines to polylines, yes or no. Okay, I'm going to hit yes. Now it's saying it's giving me a few ways to option them, to join them, and I'm just going to use J for join. Okay. Enter fuzz distance. Don't worry about this for now. Just make sure that it's 0, and it is by default. So you can just hit enter again. And I'm going to hit enter one more time because it's asking me if I want to add any further steps to the tool. I don't. I'm done now. Okay, enter. There we go. So now you'll see as I select this thing, it's giving me one whole shape. So it's taken those segments of lines and has joined them into a polyline, which I can explode. Remember, explode. And there we go. We're back to lines again. So there you go. You know how to create a polyline, how to make part of it an arc and switch back to a line, how to combine other lines into a polyline, and how to explode a polyline into its individual lines. Okay? And good luck using that tool. So you should be quite familiar now, or at least if you've practiced a little bit with some of the tools that we've gone over with, and just the features of the user interface, it all starts making sense, and you'll get better and better and more comfortable working with commands and navigating and that sort of stuff. So as we go through the next few tools, it's going to get a little bit more concise. We're not going to go into that much detail about how to use the command line, etc. You guys just need to kind of figure it out, okay? And practice. Practice makes perfect. So on to spline next. Tonight on E-News, we will be looking at the spline tool. Please follow along. I need to turn these off. Alright, a spline is a curvy tool of multiple points, okay? And I'm reading this here on the notes. Don't forget about the notes. Because when you're not here listening to me, you can always refer back to these pieces of thin dead tree on which you can learn about all the things that were covered and will still cover. So a spline, okay? I'm going to draw a spline here. And to get to spline, it's hidden. Okay, first of all, it's you can't have every tool visible. There would just be too many. There's not enough space on the screen to put them all. So you just need to click on the little drop-down draw panel here. Okay, and there's spline over there. It's a little curvy one. Okay, so I'm going to say specify my first point, and don't forget that you can also type in the word spline or just SPL into the command line, and then you can get the tool that way. So I'm going to specify my first point here, and it's just like drawing a regular line. There we go, my next point. And you'll see that now as I start moving my mouse, it's going to curve between these 2 points. There we go. Okay, I'm going to just draw a couple of other interesting, wow, this is a really weird one. Okay, and remember, like a polyline, we can also leave the shape open, or I can close it and join the two ends, okay? And you'll see that there's an option there in the command line for me to do that. I'm just going to pretend that I'm too lazy to do it myself, and I'm going to just type C for close. There we go. Okay, so there is a curvy object, and you'll remember from the chapter where we discussed grips, I can take these little points and I can move them around like that, and I can get a different shape out of my spline. You can even cross over like this. So you can come up with some really interesting organic shapes like that. Imagine somebody asked you to draw a grand piano from the top, okay? Spline tool will probably help you quite a bit with that. I'm going to draw another one here. That was, it's a little bit more simple. Something a bit more realistic maybe. There we go. I'm going to join it myself. You'll see because I joined it manually myself without using that option, it's given me a sharp point there where I joined it, okay? And that's okay, maybe I want that. But if I wanted to join with a smooth curve, then I must use the option from the command line, okay? I must type C to close it that way instead. So that is a spline tool for you, and splines cannot be exploded, okay? They're not like polylines. Once you explode them, it sort of breaks the curvature of the line, so you can't do it with them. The next thing we'll look at is a construction line. So you can get to this by also going to the draw panel there and finding this little construction line icon there. Okay, and remember tooltips, I'm hovering over it, so I'm seeing an explanation of it. That's pretty cool. So I'm going to draw it over there. Now, I don't really use these much myself. It basically looks like a regular line, but it has infinite length. So if I draw a regular line like this, there we go. I can zoom in and out, it gets smaller, it gets larger. But if I draw a construction line next to it, look at that, it's infinite, okay? I can zoom out and I zoom out, it's just giving me that line. That's all I see. And I can use this when constructing other things, okay? I think of it as a temporary line, so that maybe I can take something from the midpoint here and I can draw something else to it. And now that I'm happy that I've got those 2 points, I can delete this line and carry on with my life. You know, use them, don't use them, they're there. I don't use them personally, but in case somebody says, hey, what's the construction line, at least you'll be able to tell them what it is. Cool. And the next one, which is a far more common tool that you'll use, is the rectangle, okay? And you can access that from up here, next to the arc. There it is there. Sometimes if you've used the polygon tool by clicking the drop-down arrow, you'll see it changes it. The fly there. It changes it into that polygon icon. So when you go looking for the rectangle again, you don't know where it is, okay? Well, it's there. It's just think of the polygon and the rectangle sharing the same little hidey hole, okay? There's the rectangle tool. So it's asking me to specify my first corner points, and you remember that we specified an exact distance and angle for the line tool, and you can do the same thing with the rectangle tool, okay? So I'm going to specify the first point, I'm going to click, then I can just drag my mouse around to specify where I want the next point to be. I could just click it down there, and that's great. I've got an arbitrarily sized rectangle now. But AutoCAD is all about being specific, okay? So if I want to draw one of a specific size, so that's quite a tongue twister, okay, I can use that particular command format to give me exactly the size that I want. So I'm going to specify the first point first, click, okay. Now instead of specifying the other point by moving my mouse, okay, I'm going to type in that formula. And if we scroll down here, there it is over there, okay. The formula is length, comma, width. Okay, and we're going to fill in those words with the actual measurements, okay, in millimeters. So remember the at symbol, at 5,000, comma, 3,000. So that will give me a rectangle of 5,000 or 5 meters long by 3,000 or 3 meters tall, if you want to think of it that way. So let's try that, okay. I'm going to just escape there and restart the tool. First corner points, click, okay, now I'm going to type at, what did we say, 5,000, okay, comma. You'll see that as I typed the comma, it locked it in there, gave me a little lock symbol. It means that it's now captured that first measurement. 3,000 is the second one. I'm going to hit enter. And now it's asking me which direction. No, it's not. There it is. There it is. It gave it to me. Okay. Sometimes, depending on what point of the tool you're in, it might still let you specify the direction if you wanted to go left to right or right to left. But typing it in this way gives me a triangle of exactly that size. Okay, 5,000 by 3,000. So you'll see if I draw a line over on top of it here, the line is snapping and it's telling me it's 5,000. 3,000. Okay, so I just used the line tool there to just double check my measurements. There is actually a measure tool which we'll get to, but I find for me the easiest is just to take the line tool and draw a little line here, and I don't even have to click to place a second point because I've got the particular settings on that show me that live measurement. Okay, that 5,000 means that I can just hover this line around, just drag the endpoint around, snap it to other parts of geometry, and I can see what that measurement is. Okay, and that way I know that when I typed in the command, it did actually give me a rectangle that was 5,000 by 3,000. So you can double check yourself like that. Okay, and just one last thing to note, it's highlighted here. You always need to type in the X and then the Y measurements for the rectangle. If you remember, the Y and the left axis, the Y and the X axis, part of the UCS. And so we always type in first the X, which is the left-right movement, and then the Y, which is the up-down movement. Okay, and now we'll move on to the circle tool. So let's go back to AutoCAD. I'm going to delete that. Circle is right up here, and you'll see that if I click on this drop-down button here, it's giving me a whole lot of different circles, okay? Ways to draw circles. Specifying the radius, specifying the diameter, a 2-point, a 3-point circle, tan. I mean, sure, I haven't seen this since high school, but the fact, what is it? Trigonometry? Logarithms? I'm very scared by those words. I've never used these in my life, ever. I just use one of the first three, okay? So I'm just going to click the one that's on the icon right here, which is center radius way of specifying circles. It's the easiest. Okay, so it's asking me first off to specify the center point for the circle. So where do I want it to be centered? Well, I don't have any geometry right now, but I'm just going to click an empty space. There we go. Specify the radius. So if you remember from your geometry classes, if you did that, if not, a radius is basically half the overall width of the circle. It's the distance from the center of the circle to the outside curved edge, okay? So if I want a round disc that is 1 meter in diameter, the radius of that is only from the center to the edge, okay? It's half. So it's 500 millimeters of the radius. So I'm going to type in 500, enter. There we go. It's giving me a 500 radius circle or a 1 meter diameter circle. And I can test this by just using my line tool and snapping it to the points of the circle. 500, there we go. I've got a circle exactly the right size that I want. And we can try to draw a circle another way as well. We can specify, let's say, 2 points. Specify the first point, circle's diameter, this one, and then I can move it down to here. Let's say I want to draw a circle the same size. My diameter needs to be 1,000. I'm just going to type in 1,000. Enter. There we go. Now if I move these circles, and I can do it just by grabbing on this grip, you'll see they're exactly the same size, okay? So I drew the same circle 2 different ways, and you can draw it a few ways over here, but those are the main ones. So pretty simple, okay? And now we'll look at drawing an arc. And please excuse the barking dog and the sporadic hip-hop that plays every now and again. It's not bad though, it's not bad. If you like hip-hop, you should check out Nas. He's got pretty cool stuff. Okay, arc. So if you look up here on the ribbon next to circle, you can find arc over there, and arc is basically a segment of a circle. So if you imagined you drew a whole circle and you erased part of it, you'd be left with an arc. Okay, so they can be drawn in a few ways, but the default way up here is a 3-point arc, and you can see all the various options over here. So I'm just going to specify my first start point of the arc, my second point, and I know this because I can just read the command line, okay, and then my third point. And there we go. It's as simple as that. And I can use these grips to adjust those endpoints, and I can also adjust the amount of bulge that comes out. But the thing with an arc is that it is always a segment of a circle. Although it is curved, it's not the same shape as a spline. Okay, it's always going to have a perfectly circular shape. And that's arc. And the next one we're going to do is an ellipse. Okay, we're on the curved theme today. So ellipse is right underneath here. There's arc, there's rectangle, there's ellipse. Okay, and I can also type just EL. It'll give me an ellipse also. So right now it's asking me to specify the end point of the ellipse. So I'm going to click over here. Let's specify the other end point. Let's say it's over there. And now it's giving me the overall width of the ellipse. And now I can choose the height. Okay, by just moving my mouse up and down. And if I want a specific one, specific height, I can type it in here. Remember, it's giving me height from the center to the top. So just be aware of that. So 1000. I type this in here, it's going to give me one that is overall 2000 millimeters in height, because it's a radius we're working with. There we go. Okay, so that was quite simple. That's one way to draw an ellipse, and we can find another way. Axis end. Okay, so here's one drawing an arc, and I can you can see that I've drawn it's now snapped to that axis. Okay, you can see that it is now bulging in a particular direction based on this orange axis that is coming off here. Okay, that was pretty simple. Let's try a polygon. So, you know, a pentagon, a hexagon, octagon, those kind of shapes. So that is underneath the rectangle tool. Okay, just click on polygon over there. You can also type poly G. Let's try that quickly. Poly G. There we go. Enter number of sides. Okay, so how many sides do you want it to have? If you type 4, it's going to be a square. Okay, duh. If you type 5, you'll get a pentagon. Yeah. 6, hexagon, etc. I mean, that's just fun Latin words, really. Let's do an 8-sided one. Okay, 8. There we go. Specify the center. It's a bit like drawing a circle. Inscribed or circumscribed about circle. Okay, so these are the two ways of drawing a polygon. If you imagine an imaginary circle, drawing it inscribed would be that the polygon sits inside the circle, and I'll give you an example of that just now. And circumscribed means that the polygon sits on the outside of the circle, and think of the circle as the overall measurement of the polygon. So let's do the first one for now, inscribed in circle. I'm going to click on that, or I can type enter also. Okay, specify the radius of the circle. So it's given me this, it's put down the center point now of the polygon for me, and you see my polar tracking is doing its thing there. So I've got an 8-sided one right now. Let's just make it 1000, a nice round number. Okay, there we go. It's drawn an 8-sided polygon for me. And now if I draw a circle to demonstrate what the difference is between circumscribed and inscribed, I'm going to use my snap tracking here. I'm going to draw a circle over here, and I'm going to, oh, excuse me. I've got the wrong there. Circle center radius. That's the one I want. Let's use my snap tracking again. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to say that the radius of this circle is 1000. Okay. There you go. So that right there explains what circumscribed in a circle means. It means that if I was to take this imaginary circle and draw a polygon inside it, by inscribing it, the corners of the polygon you'll see here, they sit inside that circle. Okay. Now, if I draw the circle again, in fact, I'm just going to copy this one. Okay. And we'll get on to copying circles now. There's another one. Now I'm going to draw a polygon again, and I'm going to use the other option, number of sides. Let's leave it at 8. Specify the center. I'm going to snap to the center of the circle. And now I'm going to say circumscribed about circle. Okay. Now, if I typed in that same measurement of 1000, you'll see that it's placed all the points of the polygon on the outside of the circle. Okay. So these kind of have the same. If you imagined I measured from this point across here, I'm going to get 2000. And if I measure from the flat points, okay, so not the corners of the polygon, but the flat sides, from one flat side to another flat side, I'm going to get 2000, okay? Because you have to remember that there's 2 ways to measure a polygon. So, but as long as you pretend that they're inside an imaginary circle, that will make the key difference between circumscribing one and inscribing one. Okay, as you work with it, it'll make a little more sense. And now the last tool that we're going to look at is hatching and gradients. Okay, this is quite a specific one to know, an important one anyway, because especially when you're doing any kind of architectural drawing, the way that you denote different materials very often is to use hatching. Okay, brick has a certain hatch, wood has a certain hatch, and a hatch is just another name for a pattern. You know, like a series of parallel lines, or a little scratchy thing, or if it's concrete, it's got little bits of triangle. It looks like little bits of aggregate and sediment inside there. So these hatching patterns are really cool ways to differentiate different areas of your drawing. Okay, and we can use hatching by going over here to this little, you can see there's a little block that looks like it's been filled with a diagonal pattern. So hatching is accessible from clicking this button over here, or I can just type hatch or just H. Okay, it's not going to make any sense to hatch in empty space though, because it needs to have an enclosed shape around it. Okay, you have to hatch an area that is completely enclosed. That's really key. So I'm going to draw a quick little bit of architectural something here. Let's pretend that we're looking at the corner of a building. Okay, and then let's say that we have a pillar on this side, looking through the top of a round pillar. Okay, we've got a couple of objects here. They're completely enclosed, and I'm going to draw one now that is not enclosed. I'm going to leave it open right there. Okay, you'll see that there's a gap there. If you imagine this was like a pool and I filled this with water, all the water would leak out through that gap. So let's go to the hatch tool. I'm going to type H for hatch, or I can use the icon, whichever. So you'll see now that it's popped up a new tab on the ribbon up here called Hatch Creation. And these are a couple of tools that I can use if I don't want to use the command line to specify various settings about the hatch, etc. But the first thing it's going to ask me when I select the tool is I need to pick an internal point. Okay, and this means a point that is enclosed by some geometry. So you'll see that as I move my mouse cursor over here, it's already identifying that. I haven't clicked anything yet, but it fills it with white to let you know that that is a valid space that you can hatch. And if I move over to the circle, it's going to be the same. Watch what happens when I move here. It can't do it, okay, because that hatch is basically leaking out through that gap there into the whole drawing. And you can't hatch an entire drawing, okay? It would be like going out with a paint bucket and just painting the entire suburb a particular color. It's just, you can't do it, okay? Although you could try, and be really interesting. But, so I'm going to pick an internal point, okay? So let's say I want to hatch this one, and I can choose more than one point as well. I just clicked once to select that, and I can select this one as well. There we go. I'm done selecting points. I'm just going to hit enter to accept this hatch. There we go. So the default hatch is giving me is just a solid fill color. Okay, so this chapter in the notes is called Hatch and Gradients, because not only can you put a pattern in there, you can put a gradient, in other words a fade from one color to another color, and you can also put a solid color in there as well. So anytime you want to kind of color something in, think of it that way, in AutoCAD you can use the hatch or gradient tool. Okay, let's go back to AutoCAD. So that's a kind of a boring hatch. I mean, that's just a solid color. I don't like that. So let's try that again. Let's go hatch. I'm going to select this point, I'm going to select this one, and now instead of pressing enter, which is going to just complete the hatch right there and then, I'm going to go down here, I'm going to type T for settings. Okay, if I look at the bottom in my command line, it's got these three different options for the tool. I can select more objects that I want to hatch, but I'm done with that. And I can either click on the word settings, or remember that blue letter, the capital T there is selected, is highlighted in blue. So I can just type T also. There we go. Now this is going to bring up the hatch and gradient settings window. Okay, and you can see here that right now it's coming through as a solid fill. There's my color, it's white, and it's coming through as a solid block. I don't want that, okay? And there's my pattern. I can choose different patterns over here. Let's go and find something interesting. Let's make this one ghost ground, okay? Whatever that is. Okay, so now it's not updated. If I click preview, I want to see what that change was that I made. Okay, it's not going to do it automatically. If I click preview, okay, I have to zoom in. It's really small, okay, which means that the scale of this hatch is a little bit off. It almost looks solid when I zoom out. If you're not sure, just zoom in a little bit. And I haven't clicked or anything yet. I'm just rolling the mouse wheel back and forth. Okay, I can see that something is coming up there. If I read the command line, it says pick or press escape to return to dialog, or right click to accept the hatch. Right, I'm not going to accept the hatch. I think it's too small right now. I'm going to hit escape. Let's go back to the settings. So there's my scale setting over there. Let's make this 10 times bigger, okay? Let's preview that. That's much better. Okay, so now I'm starting to see something. So I want to change it a little bit more. I'm going to go back to the settings over here. I pressed escape. Let's see. So I'm happy with that one, but if you ever want to choose another one, here they all are, okay? Just take note of this little button with the 3 dots on it. It's in the pattern over here. You can also select them like this, but you know, who knows what ANSI32 is? It's way easier just to click on this little 3 dots there and then get a little visual preview for what it is, okay? So I'm happy with that ghost ground right now. I could choose gravel, insulation. There are some standards in architectural drawing and interior design drawings that certain hatching are used for certain materials. You don't mix them up because that would confuse people. So I'm happy with the color. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm happy with the pattern. I'm going to say OK to this hatch. Okay. It's asking if I want to pick an internal point. Let's just hit enter. There we go. Okay. So there, I've created a hatch. I'm quite happy with that. Let's try something else. Okay. Let's try another hatch again. I'm going to choose this one and this one. Let's go T for settings. Okay, so now you'll notice that I picked those 2 internal points, okay, that are enclosed by this geometry. So the circle and this upside down L shape here. So those are referred to as boundaries, okay? Hatching works within boundaries, and those boundaries are those enclosed spaces. And if you have done a hatch already and you decide that you want to now extend this hatch to other areas, like you hatched a piece of a wall but you want to hatch the piece of the wall that's adjacent to it, I can add more boundaries afterwards without affecting the pattern settings that I've set for the hatch. So I can go to pick points here, or I don't actually have any more to pick. I've already picked all the enclosed spaces in the drawing. So I'm just going to, here we go. Under boundaries, you'll see that there's a little box that keeps all these boundary related tools together. I'm going to remove a boundary. Okay, let's remove this one. Select boundary to remove this one. So now I don't want to hatch anymore. Okay, now I'm just getting the hatch in there. And now if I hit enter, okay, I've now successfully removed that boundary from that hatch. So just remember that if I click on this hatch, it's selecting this now. But if I was to put a hatch at the same time as using this tool, if I also specified that as one of the boundaries, it treats all the hatches together as one. Okay, so another way to edit this hatch is just to right click on it and go to hatch edit. Okay, and now I can get those settings again. So this way, if I've drawn a hatch and I've done a whole bunch of drawing and I come back to it later and I want to change the settings, I don't have to rehatch from scratch again. I can just select that hatch and then edit its properties, make it a different shape, color, pattern, whatever. Okay, now I'm just going to add an extra boundary in. Let's say I drew a piece of wall. I want to include it now, or a pillar in this case. I'm going to go to select objects. I'm going to say this one. Yep, I'm going to hit enter. Now if I move this across, well, I'll probably have to hit preview. Yep, there we go. Okay, it's now included this as an extra boundary. So I'm going to hit enter now to accept. And now you see when I click on the hatch, it's selecting these 2 things together. So all of those boundaries are kind of groups into one hatch, which is kind of useful. And yeah, like I said, you can just right click on it. You can go to hatch edit and you can change your properties over here. I can change the scale. And I can change the angle as well. So this thing is running 45 degrees right now. Let's say I want to change it to run 45 degrees in the other direction. I can change this by just typing in 90 degrees. That will rotate it like this. Okay, let's preview. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I managed to flip it the other way. So I'm happy with that. I can hit enter. And now my hatch is stuck like that. Cool. So, and if I don't want to hatch, I can also select it like this. And then I can just delete it. Okay, and a more advanced way of working with boundaries, I'm going to give you an example now. I'm going to use a polyline for this because it's a little bit easier. I'm going to draw a similar shape. Okay, there we go. There's my polyline. I'm going to hatch it now. I'm just going to choose something random. Okay, there, I've hatched this. So now if I come back and I decide that even though you know, it falls nicely within the lines here. If I would like a little bit of this to bleed out somewhere, let's say I've got some extra geometry here. Let's say that that's a segment of wall, and I want to extend, I want to extend this hatch into that area, okay? I can right click on the hatch, and I can go to Hatch Edit, and I can go to Display Boundary Objects. This is basically going to put grips onto the boundary objects, the things that are containing my hatch. So if I click on there, you'll see it's now highlighted the boundary for me. It's giving me grips. Now if I click here, there we go. You see, I'm actually manipulating the boundary directly of the hatch, okay? And I can use this and I can snap it at different points, but it means that I leave the underlying geometry alone. I don't need to mess with the lines that I drew. I can actually just recreate the boundary. There, you see I'm messing with the lines already. But that is just one way of using the grips on the boundaries in order to make them flow into new spaces or something like that without having to you know, delete the hatch and then rehatch the whole area, okay? It's a quick modification. And that brings us to the end of page 15 and chapter 4 of the drawing tools of the notes. And in the next section, we will be looking at chapter 5, which are some of the modify tools. Hooray!